Outlander fans, the mystery of Faith has haunted us for years, and now with Blood of My Blood arriving before Season 8, the questions are louder than ever. Why release this prequel first? Why place Julia and Henry's story in our hands before the final season unfolds? The answer may be simple, yet it opens doors to one of the most emotional theories in the Outlander universe. Could Blood of My Blood finally solve the Faith mystery once and for all? From the very first scenes, the show makes one thing clear. Julia, Claire's mother, is back in the past, pregnant with her second child. That single detail changes everything. Suddenly, the timeline feels unstable. The future feels uncertain. And Faith's mystery begins to take shape in a way we've never considered before. What makes this so compelling is that we don't yet know if Julia's second child will survive. We don't know if it's a son or a daughter. We don't know if Julia and Henry will ever make it back to the future. Every unanswered question pulls us deeper into the possibilities, and the deeper we go, the more the Faith storyline begins to shimmer in the background, waiting for its moment. One of the most popular theories is that Julia's second child eventually carries on a bloodline that leads directly to Faith, the lost baby who broke Claire and Jamie's hearts in Paris. Imagine the weight of that revelation. It would mean Claire herself is woven into her own family's past in ways she never realized. If true, Claire wouldn't just be a healer, a fighter, or a time traveler. She would also be Faith's great aunt through a hidden branch of her family tree. But why stop at one theory? The creators of Outlander have always thrived on layers. They never hand us a single path. Instead, they give us crossroads filled with choices. And Julia's pregnancy stands at the heart of those crossroads. So let's dig deeper. Why release Blood of My Blood before the final season? Some believe it's purely about keeping fans engaged during the long wait. After all, the hype around Outlander Season 8 is massive. But others believe there's a more delicate reason. Julia's pregnancy isn't just a random storyline. It could be the key that connects past and future, binding Claire's family across centuries. If that's true, then Julia's unborn child could carry more weight than any character introduced so far. The baby may hold the answers to who Faith truly was, why her existence feels like a ghost hovering over the story, and why her memory refuses to fade. Still, we have to remember something important. Outlander Season 8 was already written long before Blood of My Blood came into being. That means any connection between the two isn't likely to rewrite the main story completely, but it could add a depth we never expected. Think of it less as a rewriting of history, and more as a hidden doorway that opens into the corners of the Fraser family we've never seen. This is where it gets interesting. Season 8 already promises new characters, new battles, and the long-awaited answers to Jamie's ghost. With so much packed into one season, how much time can the writers really dedicate to Faith's mystery? Probably not more than a few episodes. Yet Julia's pregnancy plants a seed of possibility that could bloom quietly in the background, reshaping the emotional foundation of the story. And that's only the beginning. Because if Julia's second child truly matters, we need to ask the harder question. Why didn't Julia and Henry ever return to the future? The absence of Julia and Henry in Claire's future is one of the most haunting questions Blood of My Blood raises. In Outlander, Claire grows up believing her parents died in a car accident when she was just 5 years old. She was then raised by her Uncle Lamb. But what if that story was never the whole truth? What if Julia and Henry didn't die, but instead were pulled into the past, trapped in a timeline they could never escape? That possibility alone makes Julia's pregnancy feel like more than just another subplot. It becomes a symbol of unfinished history. If Julia's second child is born in the 1700s, the ripple effects could stretch across generations. Could this child secretly be the missing link that explains Faith's existence? Could this be why Blood of My Blood had to arrive before Season 8? One possibility is both heartbreaking and fascinating. Some fans believe Julia's unborn baby could be Lord Lovett's illegitimate child. Remember the tense scene at the end of Episode 3, when Julia went into Simon's room to protect her unborn baby? That moment opened a door to speculation. Could the baby's bloodline tie to Simon in ways Julia never intended? But then another question rises. Would Julia and Henry ever leave their child behind in the hands of someone like Lord Lovat? The answer feels like a resounding no. Julia and Henry's love is too fierce, too protective. Even if Simon forced his way into the child's life, Julia and Henry would fight to the end to keep their baby safe. which is why this theory, while dramatic, doesn't hold much ground for many fans. It simply doesn't fit who Julia and Henry are at their core. Still, Outlander has never shied away from tragedy, which is why another theory carries a bittersweet charm. What if Julia escapes Simon with the help of Brian, Henry's brother? Imagine this. Julia reunites with Henry in the past, gives birth safely, and raises her child with hope, despite the chaos around them. The child could be a daughter, and if that happens, some fans believe the baby's name might even be Hope. After all, hope has always been a recurring theme woven through Outlander's most painful and beautiful moments. But here's the catch. If Julia's baby is born around 1715, the timeline becomes tricky. By the 1770s, Jane and Fanny are still very young. That would make Julia's daughter too old to be their mother. Unless the writers choose to bend the timeline, this theory struggles to fit neatly into the story. What if the child is a boy instead? That changes everything. A son born in 1715 could still father children in the 1750s or 1760s, which would line up much better with Jane and Fanny's ages. It's a possibility that keeps the theory alive. Yet the idea of a daughter carries emotional weight. A daughter feels more symbolic, more in tune with the themes of motherhood, resilience, and legacy. So which path feels more likely? A son who fits the timeline or a daughter who embodies the heart of the story? Outlander thrives on this kind of tension, where logic battles against emotion. And until we know for sure, both theories remain standing side by side. But let's not forget, Blood of My Blood isn't adapted directly from Diana Gabaldon's books. That means the writers are stepping into uncharted territory. And in uncharted territory, anything is possible. The most burning questions remain unanswered. Why didn't Julia and Henry return to the future? Were they forced to stay? Was time itself too cruel to let them pass through again? And if their child survived, why didn't they ever meet Claire? Why didn't this bloodline try to reach across time? These questions aren't just loose threads. They're intentional mysteries, planted to keep fans guessing. And at the center of it all is Faith's shadow, a child who lived for only moments, but whose presence has echoed through every season since. Theories don't stop there, because if the bloodline theory feels too neat, there are others waiting in the wings. And one of them points to one of the strangest figures in Outlander's world. When logic starts to stumble, Outlander often turns toward the mystical. And that's where one of the wildest theories comes in. The theory involving Master Raymond. Some fans believe Raymond is not only a healer with mysterious powers, but a man who can bend the rules of life and death. The idea is bold. According to this theory, Raymond could have revived Claire's stillborn baby, Faith, and hidden her away in another time or place. In this version of events, Faith never truly died. She lived, grew up, and eventually became the mother of Jane and Fanny. At first glance, it sounds dramatic enough to be worthy of Outlander's time-bending world. But when you look closer, the gaps are hard to ignore. If Faith had been saved, why would she never return to Claire? Why would she not show up across the seasons, if only for a fleeting encounter? It stretches the story so far that even devoted fans hesitate to accept it. Outlander thrives on mystery, yes, but it also thrives on plausibility within its own universe. And the Raymond theory feels like it leaps beyond that delicate balance. That's why many lean back toward the bloodline theory. The possibility that Julia's second child becomes part of Faith's lineage feels cleaner, more grounded, and strangely poetic. It keeps Claire's story rooted in family ties, rather than fantastical twists. Still, Outlander has always enjoyed throwing a curveball, and the Raymond theory reminds us not to dismiss the unexpected. After all, Raymond himself remains an unsolved enigma, a man tied to Claire's healing gifts, and possibly to time travel itself. Could the writers be saving him for a final revelation? The thought alone keeps the theory alive. But the mysteries don't end there. Some fans whisper of another shocking possibility. That Julia's unborn child is not just an ancestor or a hidden figure, but someone we already know. Gaylis Duncan. Imagine the ripple of that revelation. Julia giving birth to Gaylis would bind two storylines together in a way no one saw coming. It would make Julia not just Claire's mother, but the mother of one of Outlander's most notorious figures. And yet, once again, the cracks begin to show. For Julia to give birth to Gaylis, she would need to bring the child into the future and raise her there. That raises too many questions. why would Galus never meet Claire? Why would this connection never surface across all the times Galus and Claire crossed paths? The theory excites, but it collapses under its own weight. If that feels too tangled, there's another, simpler explanation. The saddest theory of them all, that Julia's pregnancy ends in tragedy. Either a miscarriage or another stillbirth, echoing the pain Claire herself endured with Faith. It would be devastating. But Outlander has never shied away from heartbreak. In fact, heartbreak has always been part of its storytelling power. The possibility of loss lingers over Julia's story like a storm cloud. Yet the show has placed so much attention on her pregnancy that it feels unlikely they would end it without resolution. Which is why many still cling to the hope of a child being born, no matter how complex the consequences. And yet, the question remains. If Julia does give birth, why don't we see this child or their descendants in Claire's life later on? Why don't they attempt to time travel? Why do they disappear into history as if erased by time itself? The silence around these questions is deafening, and that silence feels intentional. But perhaps the answer doesn't lie in who the child is. Perhaps it lies in why Julia and Henry never returned to Claire at all. The fate of Julia and Henry may be the key that unlocks everything. In Outlander's established history, Claire believes her parents died when she was a child. Yet Blood of My Blood reveals a different truth. Julia and Henry were pulled into the past after that supposed accident. If that's the case, then everything Claire thought she knew about her childhood unravels. But here's where the real mystery deepens. Why didn't they return? Why didn't they find a way back to their daughter? Outlander has taught us one thing above all else. Time travel comes with a cost. Sometimes the stones demand a price so heavy that even love cannot overcome it. Some believe Julia and Henry were forced to stay in the 18th century, bound by circumstances beyond their control. Others think the passage home was simply closed, leaving them stranded forever. And then there are those who wonder if they chose to remain, sacrificing their future to protect their unborn child in the past. What we do know is this. In the trailer, Julia is seen with someone touching her face while she wears her 18th century headband. That image suggests she and Henry do reunite, at least for a time. But even that reunion carries sorrow, because it's clear they never meet Claire again in the future. Their story belongs to the past, not the present. And that brings us back to the heart of the matter. Faith, the baby who lived only moments, yet whose presence still echoes across every season. Could Julia's second child, born centuries earlier, carry the thread of Faith's lineage? Could Faith's existence be less a tragedy of chance and more a fate written by the hands of time itself? Or was Faith's story always meant to remain a wound, one that reminds us of Outlander's greatest theme? That love is eternal, but life is fragile. Theories will continue to swirl. Some will hold on to the hope of the great aunt connection. Others will cling to Master Raymond's mystical powers. A few will even whisper about Galus. But one thing is certain. Julia's pregnancy is not a footnote. It is a doorway. And through that doorway, the writers may give us the most shocking revelations of Season 8. So as we step into the final season of Outlander, the questions hang heavy. Will Julia's second child survive? Will Julia and Henry ever find a way to reach Claire again? And will the mystery of Faith finally be given closure, or will it remain one of Outlander's most haunting secrets? The only way to know is to keep watching. Because if Outlander has taught us anything, it's that every answer comes with another question. And every revelation leaves us searching for the truth hidden between the stones of time. So which theory do you believe? Is Faith's mystery tied to Julia's child, to Master Raymond, or to something even more unexpected? Share your thoughts, hold on to your theories, and prepare yourself. Because in Outlander, nothing is ever as simple as it seems.